All right. Well, I want to be conscious of everyone's time. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Harriger and I'm the General Manager at Serendipity Labs in Frisco, Texas. I want to thank you all for logging in and joining us for today's LINC webinar, Take Back Your Life. For over 2 decades now, Greg Duckworth has been teaching companies and people how to flip their thinking and approach the world of work in a completely different and profitable way. As a seasoned human resource consultant, he's intimately familiar with most areas of human resources and people development and is committed to helping accelerate the natural development of his clients. His practice includes years of experience successfully leading, coaching, and working inside organizations and consulting with intact teams both in the US and internationally. Now, after a successful career with some really well-known companies, he continues to share the knowledge that he's learned from other smart people that cared and took the time to help him think differently. Now, for any of you who are not familiar with Serendipity Labs, we are an upscale hospitality-focused workplace solution. We have over 40 locations nationwide, and whether you need an occasional workplace for yourself or more long-term offices for your team, we offer a variety of membership options that can be customized for any need or budget. For more information, I invite you to visit serendipitylabs.com, and also please reach out to us if you have any content that you'd like to share and become a LINC presenter yourself. Now, we'll be sending out an offer following this presentation too for a complimentary day pass so that you can come in and visit us at any location for a free trial. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our presenter today, Greg Duckworth.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I am excited to be here, and I always appreciate when you invite me to come share some stuff. So we'll get into that today.
I love having you.
Yeah, it's great. And for those of you that don't know, Amanda and I know each other because my company spent almost a full year, in fact, until we had our permanent space built out at Serendipity Labs. It was fantastic. Loved every second of it. Not only is this space fantastic, but I got to say kudos to Amanda and staff too. You won't be better treated anywhere else. So thanks for everything. So it's all been good.
Well, thank you. You were a joy to serve, and I'm so grateful that we get to continue to be neighbors.
Got it. We love it. So that is awesome. So with that, let's transition into what we're here to talk about today. And I want to stop first of all and say thank you for your time, because as you'll see, this whole presentation is really about time and energy management. And I always warn people in this session too, I speak from experience, and not that I am the most versed person in the world. I consider myself a behavior specialist. My job is about behavior modification. Now that sounds kind of, kind of like Frankenstein or whatever, or controlling people's minds in a business. That's not the intent. It's really about how do you maximize your potential. And the great thing, as Les Brown would say, motivational speaker, there is greatness in everybody. I think the challenge sometimes is we forget that greatness that's inside there. We let the world take over that greatness, and it starts to suppress who we really are and what we're capable of being. And so that's what this session is about today, the Take Back Your Life. After being in HR for over 20 years, working for companies like Microsoft, AT&T, Eastman Kodak, a lot of the bigger players out there, I've had a lot of experience working with the people and all the stuff that comes with our day-to-day lives. And that's where this presentation comes from. With that, let's talk about some things. I have an agenda. The agenda is very simple. I use the same agenda in every presentation I do, and you're welcome to steal this because it feels like it works for me. There's 3 things we're going to cover today. Ready? The first is what. The next is so what. And the final is now what? Now, I kind of kid about those things, but I think of it like this. The what is very simple. The what is the name of the presentation. It's about taking back our life. So we already know what we're going to talk about today. The question now becomes, so what? Why do we even care about this? And some of you may, just have been curious or whatever. For me, this is one of the most personally impactful sessions that I do. And you'll hear some of the stories that I'm going to share that are very emotional for me because they were part of my life. I experienced these things and they changed who I am and how I think because of this. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So what? Why do we even care about this subject? Why are we sitting here today? I'm going to ask you to stop and do something for me right now. We've got to frame ourselves first. Part of the training session I was at Microsoft, we were taught to talk about and to think about our compass, or in this case, our true north. And our true north is what we were always going to aspire to. It's, don't let the day stuff get in your way. Always be conscious of those things that really make the biggest difference for you. And we were challenged to really stop and think about what are the three most important things in our lives. And that's way beyond the making a paycheck so I can pay the bills. We went home at night, we journaled, we thought about these things, and maybe you can start to think about them on the call today, but I'm going to challenge you at some point this week, and preferably by this evening, when you have a moment to yourself, and I need you to steal a moment back if you're crazy, super busy like most people are. And I want you to be quiet. I want you to think about what are those three most important things, and are you doing those things today? And if not, why, and how can we get you back to that? Again, we're going to take that greatness that's in ourselves, and we're going to find that if we've lost it, and we're going to learn how to make it work even better for ourselves. So once you stop and think about and you articulate and write down those three most important things, you're now on your journey. You now begin. You're ultimately going to figure out, why do you care about this subject? Back to the so what piece of it. More importantly, this is not first to figure out why you care, but who cares about you? We don't come into this world to make a lot of money and to be rich and have great things, because what doesn't care about us? Who does? Okay. And I think about the families that are out there and the families that surround me. And we're about to, for many people, maybe experience joy because we're bringing people together and we're going to celebrate in all those ways they tell us to in the media today, carefully and safely. But we're going to spend time together. At least we're going to think about people. Other people are going to have a more difficult time because maybe you've lost a loved one or somebody that's been close in your life, or you've got a broken relationship somewhere, something that's happened to you. So you may either have positive or negative feelings. But the one thing about it is I have people around me that do care about me, that do love me. And that's one of the things that I'm going to spend time on. You have people like my parents. My parents are aging. They like to spend time with with their grandkids, with my kids. In fact, they moved 6 hours after they'd lived in the same location for 70 years. They moved 6 hours just to be closer to us to experience that. So again, it's those moments in time. It's the people that, we sometimes forget about, those that are handicapped or ailing or sick or whatever like that. There's all these things around us that we've got to stop and figure out, this is what we really care about. And this is going to start to ground us in what it is that we're going to do to take back our lives. So we've got to figure out, first of all, what is important in our lives so that we know what we're going to be after. So we're setting up our blueprint. If we don't do that, and we all know that we should be prepared to suffer those consequences. And depression is at an all-time high because people are chasing they're on that hamster wheel of life, if you will, and they're doing all these things that are sucking up and eating our time. But we're not getting any value out of it. We're not feeling the reward that we want to. We'll talk about how our brains work in a minute and how that reward either punishes us or makes us feel better. And I'm going to tell you how to control some of that in a minute with some of the things that we've studied. If you don't take care of the things and figure out what's important, like your health, you're going to end up getting sick or having some type of infirmity, or you're going to get worn down faster than you would have other times. And the worst of all is, I've had employees that have worked so hard preparing for a meeting or making sure they were on every conference call or always working on a presentation deck or whatever, that literally died. I had one story, and I'll tell you, there was a person that was supposed to be in Germany for a meeting for one of the companies that I worked with. And they called us up and said, so-and-so didn't report to this meeting. And so we got a little concerned. We started calling around. Nobody knew where he was. We ended up sending the police for a well check. They knocked on the door. They finally had to break open the door, and they got in there. He had passed away from a massive heart attack and had fallen over his luggage as he was trying to get ready to go to yet another meeting. Now, I want you to stop and think about that, because for me, those things make me stop and they give me pause because I experienced those things. Those are real stories, and there's a million stories like that. And I use those, first of all, as reminders that we all have the ability to control our lives, but we have to choose to do that. So we're going to talk more happy thoughts in a moment, but we're going to learn how to stop and think about what we want to do next. But before we do that, I've got one other story. I'm going to bring you down a little bit. I'm going to tell you the story of another individual that I met. And this story happened to me over 15 years ago. And you're going to see how impactful this was. This was one of the moments in my life as an individual, as an HR professional, that profoundly changed the way I thought about my life and what was important to me. And This is about a person, and names have been changed to protect the innocent, but her name is Betty. It was my first week on the job at Microsoft, and I was all excited and everything was great. And I'm sitting in my office, and Betty comes walking into my office one day, and she was older, and she came into my office to work through being laid off. Okay, and you would think, because a lot of people have experienced that recently, being laid off or let go from your position is kind of a difficult position to go through and be in. But Betty was really happy about it. And I'll never forget, she sat down in a chair, and we were talking through all the things, and she was sharing all the things she was so excited about, because she told me, you know, Greg, I've spent a lot of time doing all this work and preparing for these classes and teaching these things and I've just gone nonstop for all this time. I don't use my vacation time. And now I'm finally going to have time to spend time for myself. I'm going to spend time with my grandkids. I'm going to do what I want to do. It's going to be great. And then she goes on to say, I'm even going to have time to finally go to the doctor. And she was so excited about these things. She was telling me, you know, I've had this spot on my knee for a while now, and I'm going to go get it checked. So anyway, meeting goes on and she leaves. About 2 weeks later, Betty calls me up on the phone and says, Greg, I've got some bad news, unfortunately. I went to the dermatologist and they checked that spot on my leg, and it's malignant melanoma. So we're going to start treatment sessions, and I need to learn more about how these benefits work, so I make sure that I got maximized possibilities out of that. So we talked about that and went on. About 4 weeks later, you heard me right, 4 weeks later, I got a call this time, and this time it wasn't from Betty, it was from one of her family members. And she said, unfortunately, Betty passed away this morning. I want you to stop and reflect on that a minute, because that's a real story, and that's a moment in my life that's made me stop and pause all the things that I was chasing, all the things that I allowed to take my time from me that really weren't that important. And Betty lives on in this case. And while it's a sad story, Betty can still impact lives, because I tell that story and I want people to stop and think about, this is what happened to Betty. She wouldn't have wanted it that way, but we don't have a choice sometimes. We don't know where the ending is or how it happens. We have to live our days to the fullest, and we've got to stop letting all those things that aren't important get in our way. Okay, so I want you to stop and think about, if we've got to manage our time. The time, we all have an expiration date, okay? We get it, right? Not going to completely belabor it. I'm going to bring us out of this kind of funk that I've put us in with all the sad stories and things. But the time is continuing to move on. We have the ability to stop and do something now. When I talk to people, something that's always resonated with me is the idea of thinking about time as a commodity. Okay, so I'm going to frame it differently. Instead of something that just tick, tick, ticks on your watch or on your clock, I want you to turn it into a currency. Okay, so every day, everybody starts with the exact same amount of currency, if you will, right? 24 hours. I don't care whether you're a celebrity or you're Bill Gates or who you are, you have the exact same amount of time. The people that are rich, the people that are poor, all the people have the same amount of time. So time is a commodity. With that being said, this is a commodity that's very unique in the fact that you can't beg for more of it. You can't borrow it from anybody else. You can't even steal anything else. When your time is exhausted at the end of your 24 hours, however you decided to carve that up and however you decided to spend that money, that time money, that commodity, that was your choice. And again, why I appreciate you spending time with me today too, is you've invested this amount of time listening to me, and hopefully I'm going to present some things that are going to impact you, and you're going to pull something out of this that makes a difference for you. So I want you to stop and think about time as a commodity and how you can use that effectively. The next thing is, we're going to stop, and because I talk about behavior modification, we can all learn to think about things differently and change. I love the book Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. I had a great instructor a long time ago teach me or tell me about this book, and I had the ability to read it, and I use it and refer to it, in fact, a lot of my sessions. And it's around choices, and it's choice, not chance, that determines our destiny. And I've got 2 slides I have to read to you, because I just love the way this sounds, and it makes us stop and realize it's not the things that are happening to us, it's the things that we allow to happen and that we control. And from this excerpt of the book, Man's Search for Meaning, which, by the way, Dr. Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor, and he went on to do great things. And so his quote is this: "We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And there were always choices to make. Every day, every hour offered the opportunity to make a decision which would determine whether you would or would not submit to those powers which threaten to rob you of your very self, your inner freedom, which determined whether or not you would become the plaything of circumstance, renouncing freedom and dignity to become molded into the form of the typical inmate. I love that. We determined whether or not we were going to become the plaything of circumstance. We take control. We have control. We exercise control over those things. I want you to realize now we know that's important. We get the so what piece of it. Is we start to move into the now what. What are we going to do about these? What are some solutions? What are some tactics that I can use starting right now to really regain those things and to think about the world differently? I always kind of jump in here first before we get to that point. Is a lot of people that I coach and talk to will say, oh, great, I love this stuff. I'm going to take these ideas, I'm going to go implement them. And invariably, you know, I'll come back to them later and say, well, did you try some of those things out? Well, yeah, I was going to, but, and they would tell me the story of why they couldn't do something. They allowed something else to control their ability to manage their own lives. So my challenge to you is don't let your butt get in your own way. I kind of say that tongue in cheek because for me, it's a little bit funny too. It's a little bit of the juvenile humor. All right, so to frame the last piece of it, I love this, and this still sticks with me too, because I think about this in my day-to-day actions. The first is Parkinson's law. You've all experienced this, I know you have, because this is where procrastination fills the void. And I love Parkinson's law because it says work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. If I give you a deadline on something, and you know, I'm in school again right now, finishing up a PhD. Invariably, I'm the guy that I know it needs to be done, and if I have a deadline on it, I'll get it done. It will be completed and it'll be done well, but invariably there's other things that I'll go do. You may have been in a meeting. Sometimes people schedule meetings, and if you schedule an hour for a meeting, how often have you experienced the full hour being full? Not necessarily that you've accomplished very specific objection, you know, kind of detailed things, but the time was elapsed, it was full. If you do the same thing in 30 minutes, you can still get stuff done, and you can probably get more done. So I like the idea of Parkinson's law and how it impacts procrastination, because a lot of times we will take and fill that gap, that time gap, with stuff that's unimportant that, again, just wastes our time. So think about Parkinson's law. And the other is the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. It's 80% of what, you know, happens because of 20% of what you do. So think about your time investment. You can literally, you want to start working out, spend a little bit of time, because that little bit of time working out is going to have a huge impact downstream. So think about your kind of your time allocation, and even sometimes the smaller pieces have the biggest impact on your life. So we start small, we impact big. All right, we've talked about the what, that's the name of the class. We've talked about the so what, why is this important, and some of the problems that it's going to generate for us if we don't. Now let's get into the problem solving mode. These are some things that you can take and you can use right now, or things you can be aware of to get some of that control back. I have a class that I teach called The Power of Habit. And I love this because the brain is very programmable. A lot of what I work on in the PhD program right now, we talk about behavior modification, how it works, how the mind works, things like that. And it is fascinating to me to see how the mind adapts and adjusts. And surprisingly, you know, the world of biotechnology fits well into the world of HR as well. So I begin with the idea of our brains are controllable. The interesting thing is, from a habit perspective, we start to establish our normal. You've all heard about, I want to go back to this is the new normal. I want to go back to normal. What we're saying is I want to go back to homeostasis. That's my big word for the day. I want to go back where I feel comfortable. That's where I operate the best. People a lot of times don't like to move outside of that zone. I want to feel comfortable. And so that's what normal means to people. It means I do what I've always done because I don't have to think about it much anymore. And if you don't know how this works, next time you drive to the office or drive somewhere, how often do you think about every brake that you hit? How many times do you think about every accelerator that you push? How many times do you turn? You don't have to stop and think about every detail. Once you run that path, your mind takes over and it does this. So your brain is something that is controllable. The interesting thing is once you lay that blueprint down, you've got to do something to change it if it's not where you want it to be. But you have that capability because, again, your mind is this wonderful microcomputer that is programmable, and you're the software programmer. If you chose to put in malware and mess things up, that happens. If you put in good positive things, the things that are going to take you forward, you can set those as new habits or those things that will change and move you into a different way. So if you don't like what's going on right now in your life or parts of it, you absolutely can control and change those things. So with that, I'm going to spend a little bit of time in kind of the neurobiology piece of this. We're going to talk a little bit of science because this is my space and I love to go study it. And we do research around this and everything. And it's about how to change what's happening in your head. A few things. So a friend of mine and I from the same cohort, we wrote an article for a textbook, and the name of the article is called "Look Up Life Without Technology." And it was a fascinating study. It was a 2-year study where the teacher assigned there's the person's students one objective, and that's to go without any technology, any type of electronics for the weekend. That's all they had to do. And then they were to come back and write about their experience. And it was absolutely fascinating to hear the pain that people went through when they put down their smartphone, how they struggle sometimes to figure out what else to do. They had that FOMO, the fear of missing out. I have to go touch something. Many of them never made it to the end of even the weekend because they were so addicted to the technology. And for me, that was fascinating to get a real glimpse and a view into people's heads of how technology has become so pervasive. Now, a little more detail around that. Again, we're not going to go super deep into the science on this, but there's a really good book if you're interested and want to learn a little bit more called Hooked. And this is about how to build habit forming kind of products. Specifically, this is written more around marketing and how marketers use this for us. But you can apply that to everyday lives too. There's some other really good books. If you want to know more references, you can go, read on your own. Let me know. I'm happy to help you with those things. But what I love this is that ultimately we are all drug addicts. Okay. Yeah, I went dark on you again. Now I want you to think about it like this. As I said, your brain is that programmable thing, but your brain responds to these different stimulus, whether it be something that makes you feel good, makes you feel anxious, all those things. A lot of them are chemical responses in the brain. And I love this quote, smartphones themselves, because everybody has a phone. I enjoy just sitting around watching sometimes in public how many people are just constantly working through their phone, right? You're sitting at dinner, and you've all seen this before too, and the couple is sitting together and they're both on their phone, not saying a word to each other and spinning through. You may live in the same house where instead of getting up and telling your kids to go turn off the television or turn it down, you just text them really quick, okay? So smartphones have become very pervasive, so much so that they have created this chemical addiction in our brain. And as the quote here says, they become portable dopamine pumps. They give us this burst of feeling good when we touch them. That's why, I have to wake up in the morning and I flip it open and I look to see who's liked my post or what somebody's posted to see what's going on. When I do those things and I get that feedback, I get that positive, happy feeling. And so all those things start to play a role in our lives. The most interesting thing, I had a friend tell me about a movie, if you will. It's a little over an hour long on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. It was absolutely fascinating because of the influence of technology. And I spend, again, several slides just talking about technology because of the research that we've done and seeing how much that has become time sucks in our lives, how much we've given to this piece of equipment that we've become so reliant on so that we almost can't live without it sometimes. We go into literally withdrawals when we put that down or we do that. So if you're interested in kind of seeing more from the people that created this kind of addictive technology, go watch The Social Dilemma because it brings in people from some of the major social outlets. And they talk about how they created things that would make people want to use the equipment, how they want to stay connected to stuff. Before we go to the last piece of this, of what you can go do about it, the one thing that I will share with you is there's a concept, and I call them stop cues. There's even been legislation that's been considered to require what I call stop cues in social media. And here's how that works. You ever been sitting and you pull up Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, and you look at the first post and you go, I just want to go to the next thing. And you go to the next thing. And you just keep spinning. The next thing you do is you look down and you killed 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, just spinning, okay? The reason that you do that, that's been programmed intentionally. Like when you watch a YouTube video, YouTube sees what you watched. It has an algorithm to find things that are very similar, and it feeds you the next thing. So it wants to constantly keep you attached, because advertisers know the longer I keep you attached to something, the more possible it is to sell you something. And this has been around for a long time. This is nothing new. They've simply adapted it to technology now. Stop cues are something that have been removed from that. And a stop cue is simply something that tells me when it's the end. Here's an example. Whenever you're reading a book and you come to the bottom of the page, that can be a stop cue. Or you come to the end of the chapter, that's a stop cue. You know, that's a logical thing, and your brain tells you this is where it ends. I can stop now and pick it back up later. What's happened is technology has removed that piece of it. And so what happens is we go to the next, and we're constantly drifted into the next thing so that we don't know when to stop. Our brains never get that cue that says, okay, now's the time to time out and go do something else. So the first thing I do is bring this to your attention if you weren't already painfully aware of it, and you watching your family or your friends, because this is probably one of the most key things to getting back some of your life if you're addicted to technology. All right, time for another story about how life changes. And this is one that actually ends really, really well. Interesting story, and I talk about the hamburger and fries. I have a friend that is a professional speaker, and he's the one that tells this story. It really happened to him. He came home one day after a big speaking event, and as he was driving up to his house, he drove past his neighbor, had a big pickup, had a trailer on the back of it, and had a four-wheeler, one of those, you know, ATVs that you could go off-roading with, had a four-wheeler on the back of that trailer. So my friend stops and he looks over and he's talking to his friend and says, hey, that's a really nice four-wheeler you got there. The friend looks back and says, well, I'm glad you like it because I bought it for you. And he laughs. He goes, no, I'm serious. I bought it for you. And he goes, what are you talking about? And the guy says, well, the reason I bought it for you is because you saved my marriage. You saved my life. And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, do you remember that time that we were talking about, you know, my job and my family? And I told you how busy I was. I was working these crazy long hours. I was flying in and out all the time. I was spending all these times because I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted them to have the best things that they could have. I wanted to have a nice house and a nice car. I wanted to go to good schools. I wanted to live in a good neighborhood. And I was going to make sure that. So I was providing for my family, and I spent all the time that I could to do that. And I was telling you about this, and then you came to me one day and you said, hey, you want me to buy you lunch? And I said, yeah. And you brought lunch back to me. And when I was excited and I opened that lunch and I expected my burger and my fries, what I got was this half-eaten meal. And and he said to my friend, he says, I remember when I asked you, why did you give me, I think you gave me the wrong bag. This is obviously yours because most of the stuff is not here anymore. It's kind of gone. And my friend looked back and says to him, no, I gave you the right bag. And he goes, I don't get it. He goes, let me tell you what I'm trying to explain to you. And I could talk to you all day long like we did, but I just wanted to demonstrate it for you. Just what I've done to you when I've given you this half-eaten meal, the leftovers, the whatever's there, the junk, that's exactly what you're giving your family right now. You're working so hard and you're spending all your time to do all these things that are really unimportant to what the most important, the true north is for you and your family. This is all that's left. You're giving them the leftovers. And he said, that's when the light came on for me and I realized what was going on. So I changed it. He goes, I went in, I was talking to my wife about what happened and she started crying. And he's like, why are you crying? She goes, because I was about to file divorce proceedings. I couldn't do this anymore. And he goes, I'm here to tell you, my wife and I have a great relationship now. The kids are happy. I don't work hardly, near as hard as I did. Our whole lifestyle has changed because I took back my life, right? It was really that simple, but it took that moment of something that was as silly as a half-eaten hamburger to make him realize that there's more to life, and he wasn't giving what was important to the people that were important to him. Okay, so let's talk about what are we going to do about all this stuff. And the first thing is when we talk about the habit formations, the changing of the way we're going to think, The first part is discipline, and discipline is about, as you see on the screen, is about choosing between what you want most and what you want now. All right, so if you need help with discipline, if you're not good about that self-discipline, get an accountability partner. Say to a friend, somebody that you trust, talk to me if I can help you with something, what it is you want to accomplish, and let's work together on it to make sure that you get where you want to go. I don't do these sessions just because, it's fun to speak for 30 to 45 minutes or whatever. I do this because I get a chance to be part of somebody's life, and people can be part of my life, and we can go and do something about this. We can make the change, but we have to have the discipline to work through it, to figure out what the steps are to make it happen. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. So some things that you can do, some tips and tricks that I offer to people to get started is really as simple as, first, create a to-do list. And I'm always doing this, and I'll kind of do this for you if you're watching the screen. I have a OneNote where I keep a lot of my detail stuff in there, but every night I will stop and I'll say, okay, here's what I'm going to do the next day. I have usually two columns. One's the work column and one's the personal column. And I'll make a note to myself the night before, these are the things that I want. And then I prioritize those things. And I do that for two reasons. One is it keeps me on target of what it is that I want to get done, because I've had to stop and think, and it gets it out of my head and on a piece of paper. So it frees up that mental space a little bit. It gives me the ability to stop and prioritize things. So I'll put 1, 2, 3, and I'll be able to do that. And from a neuro standpoint, it gives me positive feedback, because when I finish something, as you see on my card right now, I strike it off. I did that. I finished that thing. And I'll break big goals into smaller goals like you heard before, but I create a to-do list so that I get that feedback and I keep myself on target, and I don't spend a lot of time wandering and wasting. Now, I do have fun and I do other things, but I know exactly what I want to accomplish. And by the end of the day, I get it done. I feel even better about things. And I really did get things done. It's also important to think about what you're going to have on your not to-do list. We'll talk in a minute about how easy it is to accept any and everything that comes your direction because I just want to be a good person. That'll get you in a whole lot of trouble. So think about the things that are off limits that you want to stop doing or do less of. Maybe you don't go completely away from something. If you're, again, hooked on technology, instead of spending an hour a day, spend 30 minutes a day. Cut back. I had a great mentor speak to me and still teach me on journaling. It's great to think about stuff. It's more powerful and impactful to write it down. I have been keeping a journal for over 20 years now, and I don't keep it every day because that would be even too cumbersome for a nut like me. But it's been fascinating to me to look back and to look at something that happened 20 years ago that I don't even actually recall anymore, but I wrote about it at the time, of how some things were so important to me at the time and how they made me feel. And now I can hardly even remember those things. There's a magic to journaling. I have a good friend that's a psychologist, and he works with his clients. And one of the things he'll do with some people that have some traumatic experiences or things they just can't let go of, that are stuck, he'll have them write them down on a piece of paper and journal and put it all out. And then he'll take them out back and he'll have them ceremonially, they'll burn the paper. And part of that is the freeing of it. You get it out of your mind, you get it onto something else, and then you free it. It's gone. And that's part of the therapy that he works through with people. And it's been very impactful to them. So it's good to be able to write things down. And as I mentioned a minute ago, find somebody that you trust that you can work with. Buddy up with somebody. Find a colleague. I call them accountability partners. Somebody that you can share, here's what I want to get done. And, I need you to talk to me and just ask me questions. It just doesn't have to be an overbearing relationship. You don't have to follow up with me every day. But if someone to know somebody else that I've committed to, that I'm going to get these things done. And I've even, in some cases, and I've seen people use social media to do that. I've got a lot of friends that decided they wanted to be more healthy in their lives. And they'll write, I'm going to start journaling. They'll do it publicly. They don't shoot pictures of the scale. That's not important. But they'll commit to how they think and how they feel and what they want to accomplish. And they'll do it in a social way. And their friends will come in and they'll like it. And again, this is part of that dopamine things where they're getting the positive feedback that makes them want to do more of that positive behavior. They'll post things about, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm thinking, and you'll start to see that weight fall off because they're using social accountability to get things done. So, as I say here, you just want to make sure that whatever you're doing today is something that's going to make you feel good and have a positive impact on your life. I had a good person that I had a chance to work with, his name is Tim Ferriss. He wrote a couple of books. You may have read them. One's the 4-Hour Work Week. He's done the 4-Hour Body, the 4-Hour Chef. You see a consistency here. Anyway, this is one of the things that Tim has suggested in this 4-Hour Work Week, that we get a lot of times overwhelmed with email, especially at work, where they come in and we stop and we'll answer the email. The problem is when we get distracted like that and we stop and do an email, it takes a minute to get back on. And if we go back off again, it's hard to maintain a focus and get something done. And his concept is fascinating and it actually works. And some people are uncomfortable with this because it is kind of a paradigm shift, but he sets up an out of office message that says something just like what you see on the screen right now. And it's framed very positively because what it's saying is that I do this I've set aside this dedicated time because you're important and your message is important and what we're going to accomplish is important. And I do that all at one time so I can spend dedicated focused time on you and what's important to you. And these other times, it lets them know that that's kind of off limits. You're going to do other things with that time, but it sets those expectations up front, both for the people sending you emails, but also for yourself, because it lets you start to carve out the dedicated time you need to do those things that are important to you. So an idea that you can use if maybe email is a problem for you. I mentioned a minute ago about the word no. Now, a lot of people can't say no. We want to please people. We want people to feel good and happy. And when we do, we get that positive reinforcement that makes us feel good. But in some cases, that is not a good use of your time and you become overburdened with things. Interesting, I had a colleague just recently and I love her to death. She's the most wonderful person in the world. She does great things. We were talking to a senior person the other day and the person said, hey, can she go after hours and do this thing? And I said, no, she can work on it tomorrow. And that was fine. And then she happens to join our call and he mentions the same thing again. Oh yeah, absolutely. I can take care of that this evening. Not a problem. And then she and I talked after the fact and she goes, I don't even know why I said that. She goes, actually, I have other plans and I'm not even sure how I could have made this work, but ultimately she was going to do it the next, we agreed that she would do it the next day, but she told me, she goes, I don't even know why I said yes. It was kind of automatic. I was maybe afraid because of the person's level, or I just automatically say yes to everything. But she even realized that sometimes it's difficult to say no and you have to learn and train yourself when that's okay. So know when to say yes and know when to say no. I use this next technique a lot, and it's called the Pomodoro technique. And it's called a Pomodoro technique because of the Pomodoro tomato. That's why I use this graphic on this slide specifically. It's really as simple as you're going to set a timer, and the timer is usually short. It's 20-25 minutes. You set the timer, and whenever you set that timer, you pick the task, and you're going to spend dedicated focus, nothing but time during that timer. So when that 25 minutes is going, that's all you're doing. Nothing else, no phone calls, no emails, nothing else. You're dedicated and focused on that thing. When the timer goes off, you stop. Your stop key. Remember we talked about that? You're going to stop and you're going to do something else. And maybe you go do an email or you go walk around because you're going to work on your health too. But you're going to do something different. You're going to come back, you're going to set your timer again, and you're going to do it. What you'll find is you will accomplish way more in those dedicated 25-minute blocks and having that free time to do other things than if you sat behind your laptop all day long and kind of slowly but surely parse things out. You'll be amazed at what you get accomplished when you employ the Pomodoro technique. It's been widely used in time management seminars forever and ever. I'm suggesting that I've used it before for the projects that I do, and it works. So maybe that's an idea that you can carry off with you and try. And you don't have to even go buy one of the old school Pomodoro, tomatoes like I show here, the old ones. If you want to get the ringing sound, you can do that. I give you the authority to use your mobile phone in a good way, in a positive way, to set your timer and do the same thing. I use also a time management matrix. Now, I don't physically use the matrix. I have this in my head. And so when things come in, whether they're things that people are talking to me about or emails that come in or whatever, text, I automatically now will put them in one of these 4 categories. So I use this time management matrix all the time. And you look at it, it's pretty simple. So you make your T-bar there, and on the left-hand side, you've got, is the task or what's coming in, is it important or is it not important? Okay, so you have to make a determination of it's come in, you have to put it in one of those 2 spaces. And then across the top, is it urgent? Does it have to be done right now or today? Or is it not that urgent? Can it be done at a later time? And if you do that, and everything that comes in now, I put it in a quadrant automatically. And I love this because when I do that, If it comes in and it's important and it's urgent and I have to do it, I do it right now. I just get it done, knock it off, and that's it. Okay. If it comes in and it's important, but it's not urgent, it doesn't have to be done right now or finished today, I'll drop it on my calendar. I love to take emails that come in, and if it's something that I'm going to do later, I'll simply take and click on that email. I'll drag it down. I'm using Outlook. I'll drag it down to my Outlook calendar and drop it, and I'll schedule it on my calendar, and I'll give it the appropriate amount of time so that when I hit that time in my calendar, that's my dedicated time to go do that thing, but it's when I choose to do it. It doesn't have to be done immediately. Next thing, something comes in, it's not important, but it is urgent. Okay. There's some things that come in like that, phone calls, some reports, stuff will come in. Then you're going to decide, is this really important or is it not important? So sometimes we decide things are important and maybe they aren't. So to give you a little bit more of a thought process that involves. And if it is important, then you're going to either do it or date it. Okay. So this is where you think about things. And the last that often sucks up so much of our time that we don't even think about is things that come in that aren't urgent and they're not important. And if that's the case, I don't even spend time on them. I delete them. They're gone. Email's another perfect example of that. We get stuff that comes in all the time. I sometimes set up auto rules that will just push things out of my inbox. I don't have to look at them. I don't want to waste time clicking to hit the delete button. And I know that's kind of over the top. Maybe that's extreme, but still an option that you can use. So what we've got to stop here, we've got to realize that we're going to not get so busy making a living that we forget to make a life. And so I kind of end the session with this thought. First, I want you to remember and stop and think, what drives you? Okay, this is back to your true north. It's the thing we started this session with today. What's your reason? Why do you exist? Why are you here? You know, what are you trying to do in your life? And what I think about is when it's my time to go, I want a long procession of cars, and I want a cemetery packed with all the people that are going to celebrate that I came their way, that I was in their life somehow, some way, that I made a difference for them. I want to live full. I want to die empty. There was a person that, again, I follow and that I've read as well. I've read before. His name is Dr. Howard Thurman, and he suggests, imagine on your deathbed that all the people, you know, that you've encountered in your life or have been around you somehow that you should have had some type of influence around, they're all around you. And they talk to you and they say that we came to you and only you could have given us life, and now we must die with you forever. Okay, did you make a difference in their lives, or did you dismiss because you were so busy doing something else? It's about choosing who and what's important today. Miles Monroe it offered something that still is incredibly impactful to me. And he says, you know, in I guess the most wealthy place on earth, it's not the Far East with all of their oil. It's not Africa with all the diamond mines and things like that. The wealthiest place on the planet is the cemetery. And for those that didn't choose to stop and take back their life to do things that were important, there were books that were never written. There was potential that was never realized. Gifts, talents, skills, art, music, the world never heard and never experienced because we were so busy doing all the things that were unimportant. So I encourage you to live full and to die empty. If you died today, again, a little dark on you today, what ideas or dreams or inventions would die with you? Okay. What has your potential said you're going to go get done, but you haven't done yet? How are you going to get those things done? Now is the time to begin to start. As you look at yourself, if you had 6 months to live, if you were Betty, what would you do? What would you do if you knew? How would you spend your time? Who would you spend your time with? And would you still be doing the same things today, right now? Or would you change something? We all have stuff in our lives that we can move, we can change, we can adjust, but we have to stop and have the discipline and the thought and the challenge to ourselves to move things forward. I want us to at this session to give this some thought, because we don't know when our last day is going to come, but we all have an expiration date. Okay, so I'm not going to read this to you, but I love this picture as well. And the beginning of it really does speak to me. This is your life. Do what you love and do it often. I love the song from the movie Rent, 525,600 minutes, 520,000 moments so dear. You know, how do you measure the moments in a year of your life? In daylights, in sunsets, in cups of coffee? Again, I'm stealing lyrics from a song, but those type songs speak to me because that's the important stuff. I got up early this morning just to watch the sunset rise. That's important to me. And I don't want to sound overly Pollyanna or excited or whatever, or be that motivational speaker guy. I truly believe this stuff because I've seen, and you've seen the people that have not allowed themselves to take control of their lives and do something different. Find your passion and live it today. My brother, who has challenges, texted me the other day, and I know he got this and he told me he got it from somewhere else, but for me, this text spoke to me, and I had it included in the presentation because it is so still powerful for me today. And it's kind of funny, but I think about it today, at this moment in time, you're the oldest that you've ever been, okay? And it's the youngest you'll ever be today. Enjoy your now. What will you do differently? I end with this. My name, as I said, is Greg Duckworth. I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can. I maintain a professional website. I have a professional job that I do full-time. I do this because I have such a passion around working and helping people that, you know, you can go check this out. Some of the resources that I've mentioned on today's call, the books, I have a section on books that I recommend. If you want to connect with me and we can talk about things, if you've been sparked into something you want to change, let me know. I am always at your beck and call. I love this opportunity. Amanda, thank you again for giving me this chance. I'll turn it back over to you. And again, just thank you very much for everything. You enjoy your life.
Oh, thank you, Greg. We appreciate that. Was such a great lesson and very inspiring at these times and eye-opening. I loved all of your analogies. I know that our participants can relate to them as well. So, and I saw the social dilemma. That was terrifying, but so realistic.
It really is. You're right.
At the same time, it's so true. You think it's just, you know, harmless social media, but how much of your life and time is it sucking out of you that could just be better energy, better used elsewhere in your family and experiences. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we'll open it up to participation. If any of our attendees or audience has any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat. Just be sure and select hosts and participants for that, or we can unmute and see if you just want to ask them live. Feel free to unmute yourself. One of my questions was going to be how to connect with you, so I appreciate this last slide. So you can take a screenshot with your phone to do that, or just jot it down, renovatemycareer.com. That's easy to remember. We'll also include a follow-up email, like I was mentioning, with that complimentary day pass so that you can come visit any Serendipity Labs. For a day trial, they'll let you into a private office or enjoy the co-working at a safe distance. All the COVID protocols in place so that everyone can feel comfortable in their work environment. The only question that I have is, you know, it's putting your phone down is easier said than done, and I have to remind myself when I'm in really cool experiences to actually enjoy them with my own eyes and not in front of my phone through the camera lens where I don't feel like I'm actually experiencing, just so I can prove to others that I was there or remember the moment when I'm not actually in it. Do you have any tips or practices to help us put our phones down in the evenings when we just kind of feel like we're lost in other activities?
Yeah, I mean, there are actually apps out there, and I don't recall immediately, so I can't tell you the app, but you can go search, you know, apps out there that will help you limit or even record screen time. I know Apple has some of the stuff that tells you how long you've been on your phone. So if you get those reports, pay attention because sometimes they're a little shocking. The other thing is really around just, it's about basic habit changes. And this is true whether you're going to put a phone down or you're going to change your eating habits or whatever. There's a model that's called cue, routine, and reward. You know, cue, whenever my phone goes off, it makes a buzz or a ring or whatever, you know, I get that signal, I've got to go touch it. And so some of the most simple things, I go in to get rid of the cue. So I'm going to turn those things off that they're buzzing and reminding me of stuff. A lot of times people have on their phones where they get auto things will get automatically fed to you. You'll get notifications and things. Turn notifications off, because anything that triggers you, that hits that cue, will make you want to do that thing again. And the only other thing is just to be thoughtful. The routine part, cue, routine, reward. The routine part is, I'm going to change the way I do things. So a lot of people roll out of bed, first thing they do, grab the phone, start looking at it. Just make a commitment to yourself that I'm not going to touch my phone for the first hour of the day. And you're going to feel uncomfortable probably for a while, because I'm so used to it. It's my brain wants that. It's that dopamine receptor. But just redevelop a schedule for yourself and give yourself the pleasure of being able to do what you like to do, but learn to limit it.
Awesome. That's such a great point. Absolutely. Because I know I'm fall bait to those notifications. It's, oh, so-and-so added a new photo or posted to their story. And this first thing you're tempted to do is go look. So turning those off will definitely help with more restraint. And my husband and I have a competition now, as opposed to, because on Sundays you get the notification on how much screen time you had and engagement on social media or creative. And now we have a competition on who has the lesser amount of time.
I was afraid you're going to say more. That's even better. I love it.
We're conscious of how bad we've been, so we've been correcting our behaviors. So this is a timely time to have this lesson and conversation. Ryan has a suggestion on getting things done. I believe that's probably a book by David Allen.
Yep. Yes. Love that. Thanks for sharing that. I'll go take a look at that. That's what I love about these sessions. I learn as much as I offer, because I get references like this, and I'll go check them out and chase them down. So thanks for sharing that, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm always looking for a good reading list. So another way to divert from technology and social media.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll let everyone get on with their afternoon. Thank you again, Greg, for this lesson and speaking with us today. Like we were saying, time is the most valuable asset that we all have. So we're very appreciative of yours and look forward to future sessions where we can learn from your knowledge.
Absolutely happy to do so. Thanks again for everybody.
All right. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye, all. Thanks.